Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeff St. Laurent, and I have a special guest on today, which I'm going to bring on in just a second. And we've got some really cool results to share, but it's bigger than the results. It's not only how they're created, but how we can keep that going long term. But it's definitely some great information you want to share, you want to hear. So stay tuned. But before we get into that, I do record all of my Tuesday live shows, put them in my university at sellingcoaching.com. I help coaches transition to a full-time business and create the systems and structures so they can actually get paid. And so today we get to talk about that, like the results of that on the other end. If you want to start right off on my homepage at sellingcoaching.com, you can enter your name and email address. That's going to get you my audio resource, Launching Your Coaching Business, the First 3 Vital Steps. And that's put you in my email community so you can get some awesome information on a weekly basis. And then lastly, I have a great 14-day GoPro challenge. If you're watching this live, I'm going to be starting another one next week, a week from today. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to check more about that and learn for other dates, visit GoProChallenge.com. And so now, Michelle, welcome to the Tuesday Live Show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All the way from Hawaii. So yes, you're quite a ways away. So this is interesting. So we had you a couple weeks ago on with the group because you took my 14-day GoPro challenge. Then you did my GoProElite 5-month group coaching program. And we had the 2 others on. We did like a little group interview and stuff like that. And you had been kicking butt like through the 5 months and really towards the end of the 5 months. This is like last December now, which is as of this show actually 3 months ago, right? Believe it or not. You really started kind of coming into your own, getting in front of, more people and actually getting clients. And I'll tell the brief version of it and then we'll dive into it. And I remember the week where you had your $4,000 week. You got 2 new clients after we said, like, I remember we had the phone conversation, hey, it's time to raise your rates, right?
Yeah. So
fast forward from there, and we'll talk about this in detail. You tell the story. You tell the story. So fast forward from there, we come into January and talk about what happened over January to bring us to what happened in the month of January and February to create some great results for yourself.
Yes. Sorry. I think my internet might be a little bit spotty, but I can certainly talk about it. So I think just entering the new year, like many people, new year, new goals, I decided to leave all of whatever happened in 2020 behind and start fresh, fresh mentality. And I kicked off January. So I'm a career coach. So I kicked off January launching a masterclass called 3 Steps to a Successful Career Transition. And I heavily promoted that in January, a lot of people thinking about new jobs, and I heavily promoted it across LinkedIn, across Slack, Facebook, anywhere that I can get. And then it ended up being I ended up getting a good maybe 130 people signing up, and then actually live I had about 80 people. So I think that was a really big step on my end. I've never spoken to that many people live before. I've never promoted that heavily before, and I ended up getting a lot of good visibility. Even results aside, it was just a good way to get my name out there and let people know what I'm about, let them know who I am, share my story. So I felt really proud of myself. That was in January. And I think the results are still TBD, to be determined what's actually what actually came out from it, because people are still, I talk to people, they're still thinking about it, or maybe they're not ready now, maybe they'll be ready in the future. But I would say January was my big push to doing that. And then I don't know what happened in February. I think maybe it was just the wind of that. And then people okay, finally I want to start doing something about it. I also have a Yelp page. So maybe a lot of people started finding me through Yelp. But I just kept doing what I'm doing. And I think people are finding me from different ways. And I don't know if there's a magic formula. I really try not to psych myself out on the number of consults that I get, because that can change day over day. And some days I'm bam, there's 3 consults just that day that got booked for the coming week. So as long as I'm continuing to show up, keep my system going, like share content, be valuable, that's really all that I can control.
Yes. And I want to dive into this a little bit because I know people watching this live of the recording, they're like, well, how did you do it? Like, so you did a masterclass and you promoted it. Like, well, what did you do? So I want to talk about that briefly. But then, so you went in and so like, it was the aftermath, the follow-up. And I think what you said that I want to highlight is that it was, because I know what happened. Like I've been there on the other end of that. So it's what you did. But it's the process and the system that we set you up with that you followed through. Like that's what gets you that. So it's having the opportunities to talk with people and follow up from the work that you do. And you were taking them through a process that we set up for you, right?
Right.
I mean, that's
I
really
remember.
it.
Yeah, I remember I was like, oh, Jeff, I got a lot of signups, and your response immediate was like, good, go speak to them or like welcome them in. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That's weird, right? Like, why would I say hi to each person that signed up? But I think that ended up being one of the best things that came out of it was like, well, not only getting market data on like who I'm actually trying to help, but like making conversations. And up until that point, like I've never really done that on a deep level to like the masses. And then that's really when I started to realize like, okay, a lot of these issues are very repetitive. Like a lot of people are going through the same things. And that just helped me to refine my message, my story, and refine my consults even more. But I think that was the single best recommendation is like they signed up, like welcome them in, ask them how they heard about you or like what they're looking to get. And that was like so valuable to me that I'm like, oh, I should just keep doing that. And following up. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah. And just so people know, that was like, and we'll talk about the promotion in a second, but that's actually after you promoted on all the social media outlets and people were registering. And this is before even the master class, right? That's what you're talking about. I'm like, well, reach out to them. And you said you got like, what, 130 plus people registered. And I remember I'm like, Michelle, you've got to individually reach out to all those people. And you're just like, what? Like individually? But like, what you're saying now, like that's where you start to create those conversations and make connections. Right. So you're not just another, webinar that people are opting into, like you're a human being who cares. And that's that really, that's a big piece. Like you're saying, that's why people can connect with you and you can get business afterwards.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
I mean, think about it. Everyone listening, watching this, like how many opt-ins and offers and, webinars do you sign up for? But never even go to or show up for, or just unsubscribe to the email list. But now imagine that person reaching out to you and connecting with you. It sets you apart and it feels like you care and they're an individual. And that's what makes a difference.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Let's rewind just a little bit. So you decided, all right, we're going to do this masterclass. Which masterclass meaning what exactly was it?
So it was like more of like a training. I ended up I was in this other online course that taught us like basics of how to, how to set up your coaching business too. So I was doing a lot in the last 6 months after leaving my corporate job and starting my coaching business. So I was like, I'm gonna get as much help as I can. So that course specifically led us at the end of it was like launching a masterclass, getting people to sign up, then pitching your offer basically. So it was this like combination of helping people. It was a combination of like sharing testimonials, a combination of just walking them through my offer. But it was like part training, part sales, but more focused on like, these are the scenarios, these are the stories that I'm seeing. So that was what the masterclass was. It's like 90 minutes, 75 to 90 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically online, like webinar, basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you decided to do that. You picked a date. And then when you said you promoted it and you did on LinkedIn and all the social media platforms, like what actually was the promotion? Like, how did you get people to sign up?
I had a landing page. So similar to like what we went through at our group course, I had a landing page. I think that what was different about my landing page, I actually had a video of myself that walked them through like, well, who is it for? Like, why am I doing this? And it had a little bit more like personality and character. But I basically said like, look, I've coached over 150 hours of career coaching just alone last year. And and I'm like, my background's in human resources and like recruiting, and like I just gave them a little bit of info, and I'm like, if you're looking to transition careers this year, like attend my masterclass. So that, I think that just got people interested and hooked. So, but I would say what was different from the other events that I hosted before was I included a small video so that they can like watch it instead of just reading.
Yeah. So basic landing page. And actually, when we're done with this, if you can get back into the comments,
sure.
And if you want to post the link to that landing page,
sure.
If anyone wants to, because I know you're going to be doing more of these. But if anything, just for the coaches to be able to see the landing page, get a feel for what it is as well. I would love to have you do that. I'm sure they would too.
Sure.
But anyway, so basic landing page with an opt-in and name and email, right? And that gets them registered for it. And then as a result of that, it sounds like you started to follow up with them. Correct?
Yep. Yeah.
And something you said earlier, which was cool, was that following up with them, making the connection, but you started to learn about your audience. What were the things that you learned through reaching out with them, the value of, following up with them after they registered?
Yeah. So my masterclass was taught on like identifying core issues. So like 3 mistakes people are making, and then I walk them through my framework. I'm like, and these are the 3 steps you need to move forward in a transition. So from the data that I ended up getting, I was able to plug them into my 3-step process and see like, okay, they're falling apart here or here, and like just spot where their mistakes are. And I ended up adding in some polling, which was great because then how people can realize like, oh gosh, I'm not the only one that's making this mistake, or like, I'm not the only one that's like experiencing these feelings, right? So I think that was really helpful, and I got a lot of really good feedback. But I ended up getting good data to see like, where are they, like in my own framework, like where are they making the mistakes, and then how can I best help them? Yeah,
definitely. And when you talk about like the email follow-ups, like you had 130 registered, like talk about the work, like the volume of emails and follow-ups you were doing. Like, what was that like? So people get an idea. Like people like, I don't think people really understand the time involved that you took. It's not like, hey, I just did my first 5-figure month. Like it was 2+ months of building up to this.
Yeah. So I do think the masterclass was like a really big push for me because I added like 130 people onto my email list that I hadn't gotten before. So basically I used my ConvertKit to pull the data, and I just had a spreadsheet to like keep track. Like every day I would reach out to the people, or maybe the day after they signed up, I would reach out to them and send them a customized email. And I had my like template, so I try to automate that process as much as possible, but I had a spreadsheet of everybody who signed up. I put a check if I reached out to them. I put another check if they responded. I like highlighted it green if they ended up booking a call. So like I had the whole master list of people who signed up, and I just try to keep track of it. But I mean, looking back, I'm like, I haven't really followed up since January. Maybe I can still, like I still have them in my normal email list, but I could still do a good job of following up for people who might have like rescheduled their calls. But that's okay. But it was very organized of like, okay, here's everybody that signed up, when I reached out, if they responded, if they set up a call.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's like the micro, diving into the microcosms of actually the day-to-day workings of it all. And then obviously you did the masterclass. Talk about what happened in terms of follow-up after the masterclass, where you started booking consultations, things like that.
Yeah. So to be honest, like normally I do like a 25-minute discovery call with individuals, and then, they go through my process. But for this masterclass, I gave them a specific link where it would be like 45 minutes. And I would walk them through. I would try to because by that point they had watched the entire presentation to make it to the end. Like they knew enough about me. So I gave them 45 minutes. And one of them immediately converted from the call. But it was slightly different. And I'm like still in the process of refining what my pitch is going to look like, if I can narrow it down into one session. But that was a good test for me to see, is it possible to close somebody in 45 minutes? And it is. And I'm starting to test that even more and more, and like get a good feel for like, how can I read people and bring them through faster.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, like I've been telling you all along is starting to understand your market, understand the process, understand, you know, what people's needs are. And refining, like we came up with a base system for you. And then what I love about you is you're constantly refining what you're doing to make it work for you. Like with what you want to see happen, the time involved you want to spend with somebody, but then also what gives the best result.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm like constantly refining. I'm like, I even have a notebook where I keep track of all my consults and I'm like, what went well? What did go well? What would I do differently? And I do that for every call just so that I have the time to really process and reflect, like, how can I get better at this? So I'm very, you know, very intentional about like constantly improving.
Yes. And so now here we are on the back end of, you know, your biggest, best month in coaching so far. And that's what we were talking before we went on. And I'm like, all right, so how you doing? Like, how you feeling about this?
Yeah.
And so now that you're there, because I'm always a big fan of like telling people, I'm like, all right, great. So that's why I don't ever market much around money and say, oh,
Yeah.
right. So you had a first 5-figure month or a multiple 5-figure month. Well, what about next month? What about the next month? What about, you know, 10 months from now? So now you're going into this next month. What's your thought process? What's your mindset, you know, going into that so you can kind of stay strong and consistent with what you're doing?
Yeah. So it's good that you gave me the pep talk beforehand because I literally had these thoughts in my mind, like, what if that was just a fluke? Like, what if I can't do this anymore? Like, what if I was too loud in sharing my results? So like naturally my human brain is telling me all these things. But then when I rationalize it, I'm like, yeah, like keep doing what I'm doing, keep showing up. And then I think part of me, like this thought of like, don't self-sabotage, right? Like don't think that I'm like not deserving of the results that I want, because I think part of me is like, oh no, I can't. Part of me is like scared, like, oh, I can't do it again. And then like, now I have to, I don't know, not be as natural on my consults or something weird. Right. So I'm in this like thought process now of like, okay, just keep showing up, just keep doing what I'm doing, and like to really tame that voice in my mind, which is basically what the essence of coaching is. It's like, don't get in your own mind, right? Don't get in your own head. So that's what I'm working through right now. And yeah, we'll see. I think as long as I just keep showing up and doing what I was doing and trying not to get too attached to the outcome, because that's what you really taught me too, is like before I'd hop on a call and it was so like, oh, I got to close this person, and it just would completely flop. So when I'm not attached to the outcome, then I end up relaxing a lot more into it. So as long as I can continue to remind myself of that, it's not about the outcome, but like now my next hurdle is really like, how do I stop getting in my own head and how do I keep maintaining the momentum without like adding pressure? And that's just a different level that I have to grow into.
Yeah. And that would be the maturity of yourself and your business as you go along. Right. And that's what it is for all of us, right? We have a maturity that we must develop, and that comes with where we're going. And in the meantime, like your biggest thing, like, don't be attached to the outcome, stick to the process that you've done, right? Schedule another masterclass, promote it. And like you do what works and you keep following that system, and then you'll tweak and evolve as you go along. And as long as you're, you know, managing your money properly, you know, and tracking everything, which we can always have a conversation about that. But trusting yourself in that system that you've created. And always, that's why it's always good to go back and look at what was the work that I did that created this, and where were the key efforts. And it was good for me to hear you talk about, because we didn't talk about this prior to this. Like, I'm like, well, what did you do? Right. And I knew some of the process, but and what you identified was, it's like, yeah, it's the follow-up that I had. It was the conversations that I created. It was the detailed systematic tracking. So I knew her. And even now you've already identified your next round of business without even doing another master class is all those other people that signed up and never showed up, or the people that showed up but didn't reply back. Like there's another, 5-10 clients in that. Maybe not now, but next month and through the rest of the year, because the timing's going to change.
Yep. And I'm like very open about testing and seeing what works. I actually do attribute a lot of my success now to things that I've done like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. Like, the fact that I created a Yelp page was something that I was very resistant to, but has gotten me a lot of leads and a lot of practice in refining this process. And I know not everyone will want to be on Yelp, and I was really resistant to it originally. But I think that helped me a lot as well. And like, even, I think I told you back in November, I wrote like a Reddit post and I shared very openly my money story. And I'm still getting people who come out and reach out to me about like, hey, I found you on Reddit. And I'm like, what? I wasn't even actively trying to get people on Reddit. I was like, I'll share this post, and sometimes I comment here and there, but like, I actually have gotten a good 3 paying clients through Reddit, which is crazy. It just like blows my mind. So like, you never know who's within your orbit. You never know where they're going to find you. But I'm glad that I'm starting to keep track to see like, how are they hearing about me, and just to continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And what I want people listening to realize is this doesn't mean like, oh, you got to go to Yelp and start a creator profile. You don't go to Reddit, and like, you can, but it's not so much about like her process and what she actually did, but it's about understanding, creating a process for yourself that works. And I think that's where too many people, like, they start to hear marketers saying like, oh, I created this type of a result. And then they look at exactly what they did and try and duplicate exactly what they did. But there's also, you have to realize with Michelle, like, there was a lot of work, like you said, the 2, 3, 4 months prior to that. I mean, Michelle, think of all the conversations like that you and I had, right? Of how many consultations did you have prior to that didn't hire you, where we had to refine like what you were saying in the process, right?
Yep, exactly.
And I think that's a big piece that a lot of people don't recognize, like, oh, here's the end result, and like, wow, I had a great month, and keep it going. But all those other conversations and all the times where, we're on the phone and you're just like, what do I do next? And how does this go? And then you were trying things out and refining it, and you weren't creating a result that allowed you to figure out how to tweak and pivot.
Yes, exactly. Like, I think about all of the failed calls that I've had, and like, I learn just as much from those than I do from like my paying clients, right? So it's constantly, I'm like constantly learning. I'm constantly just trying to get better at this. And it's fun. Like, after you get through the initial like rejection and like feeling hurt about it, it's like, okay, now I actually want to do something to get better and to feel like I'm back in control. So yeah, it's definitely been a learning process.
Awesome. Well, huge congratulations to you, Michelle. I know it's only moving forward from here. Before we go, for a coach listening to this, who's starting off, who, wants to create that, and, being yourself for 1, 2, 3, 4 months, right? But now that you've started to see some results, some good results, and starting to refine this, what could you say to someone, a coach who's doing the work or wants to do the work, but maybe just is not quite there yet?
Yeah. So just to back up and give the listeners a little bit of context of when I started, like, I joined the coaching program in April, and I quit my full-time job officially off the books, or like was off payroll, in June. So in 2020 was a big growth year for me, and I didn't have a backup plan after quitting. So I was like, I'm going to go all in on my business. And this was like June, July of 2020. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but I would say that the first 6 months, like from July to December, was just like, just go, like, just like build your business as your life depended on it. Right. And I think when I joined your group, I didn't know where to start. I never did a live video before, even though I very much wanted to. I had an email list of friends and family that I was paying ConvertKit monthly that I never used because I was too shy to send out an email on my email list. So I had like maybe 50 people, friends and family, on my email list. And then like just going through this whole like actually now it's been 8 months of starting my business. What I've really learned is like, well, you can grow a lot in a very short amount of time, but it takes this commitment and this decision to wanting to grow. I think for the first couple months, I thought, I have to suffer through this process. Like, I have to like it has to just feel really bad to get better. And once my mindset started changing to be like, no, it doesn't have to be painful. Like I can have a successful business even when I'm just starting off, because I thought my mind told me some story about like how I had to be unsuccessful like when I first started. And I'm like, I don't want to follow that narrative. I'm going to choose the narrative that I want to follow. And I want to tell myself that like I can totally crush it in my first 12 months, 18 months. So I would say that to anybody who is starting off, like it's all within your mind. It's like a lot of mindset that you're able to control, like your results, and to be extra cognizant of the thoughts that you tell yourself, and especially to be very kind to yourself. Like I started getting into a habit of really celebrating myself and like writing down everything that went well. Like I would do a whole debrief at the end of the month to be like, these are all the things that I've did well this month, and just constantly remind myself of how much I was growing, because a lot can happen within like 5 months, 6 months, even just 1 month or just 1 week. So to not let your mind trick you into telling yourself like it has to be a long suffering process, or like you have to wait until you're finally able to see results. And I would say like, no, it's all within your mind, and you can start changing it. You can start getting money as long as you're ready to receive it and you've made that decision that it's time. So that's what I would tell someone new who is starting off. Stop calling yourself a new coach or a baby coach. Just go and do it, because everyone does have, like if you're in this business, you have something to offer, you have something to teach the other person. So the sooner you own into that narrative, the sooner you'll start seeing results.